Hello, everybody, and welcome into our first trade reaction video. Are we in the trade deadline? I don't know, because it just happened. This day felt like we had a mini trade deadline because a couple big deals went down. So definitely we got to talk about these two things 'cause they're not small. They're things that are going to change these teams for the next season. So joined in by Jacob Billington, who also joined me on our trade deadline stuff. So welcome, Jacob. Thanks for joining me here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking like a tomato today in this Nova Scotian heat, but happy to be here.
Yeah, it's we're in the middle of summer now, and the Stanley Cup final's still going on. Edmonton Oilers don't want to go away, so they're it could potentially have a pretty big storyline to talk about in the next few days too. That they come back and win the cup, so that'd be a pretty big deal. But we're going to talk about these trades, which these teams are hoping that it will help them get to the Stanley Cup final next season. And we'll start with the one that's been talked about, and it's probably since the trade deadline, which is Jacob Markstrom going to the New Jersey Devils, and the returned Kevin Bahl and first round pick in 2025, not this year's, but that's two pretty big assets going to the Flames, and Markstrom moving on to the Devils. I Jacob, first of all, are you surprised that this actually happened and went down this way? Because I know the Senators were, we've talked about it on many times, or you've talked about it many times on Senators Roundtable, that he could potentially go to Ottawa, but went to the team that everyone kind of anticipated to happen. What do you think about the trade overall?
Yeah, I mean, it was getting to the point now that, yes, it was rumored that Ottawa and Toronto and a couple other teams were in the mix for Markstrom, but it was to the point that it was just like, shut up and kiss. Like, you're going to New
Yeah.
Jersey. It was pretty well done at the deadline. And here we are. The Stanley Cup finals are almost over. It's just about draft time and free agency. Just hurry up and get the deal done. We all kind of knew it was going to happen. I think the return is pretty solid.
Yeah.
It's tough because Jacob Markstrom is one of the best goalies to be traded in the last 15, 20 years. And we talked about that on the Senators Roundtable with Sean Simpson. And there's not many goalies of Jacob Markstrom's pedigree that really gets dealt. And so, especially with 2 years left on his deal, so for top 10 protected first round pick and Kevin Bahl, it's a pretty solid return. I expect Allmark will go for more, and Saros will of course go for more, but that sets a really solid bar for other teams to be dealing goalies. Kevin Bahl, I think he's a really solid defenseman. He was pretty well third pair defenseman most of the year, but he played all 82 games for the New Jersey Devils. Not an offensive guy, not a complete shutdown guy. He's just a really solid two-way
Mhm.
defenseman, and you're not going to be upset to have him in your lineup. And yeah, I think he's definitely an asset, and he's only 23 years old. So with a lot of question marks in Calgary's defense, he's going to have a spot there and kind of prove his worth and that he can play higher in the lineup. Then the first round pick, of course, I don't think anybody expects New Jersey to miss the playoffs next year, especially with Jacob Markstrom. So giving up a top 10 protected 2025 first round pick over what do they have this year? 10th?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, giving up that pick over this year, that's a home run for
Oh, yeah.
New Jersey.
For sure. I mean, they're too solid. I think Calgary came away with pretty much. I think they weren't going to get anything more than this from other teams. And Kevin Bahl, Christy Flannery, who used to write for the Hockey Writers. I know she always was really high on Bahl. Anytime I've read articles of hers, during the season that she was here, and he's very solid defenseman. Still quite young. Still established himself in the NHL, and he pretty much graduated to full time last season or this season. And yeah, a very good two-way defenseman. I think he fits what Calgary is looking at for how they play. So I mean, that a very good asset to get back, and then the first round pick obviously is going to be a really good prospect next season, depending on where the Devils land. Like you said, it's top 10 protected, so they end up not getting in the safe spot. They won't be giving up that one either. So yeah, a very good deal. I think Markstrom's gonna boost the Devils next season, because I think the biggest problem this season was goaltending. They could score. We all know that. So I think this is going to solidify that. We'll see how the rest of their offseason goes. I don't know if there's any more big moves up their sleeve, but they're still a very solid team. I think the goaltending was the thing they needed to fix. Markstrom at this point on paper looks like they have, but we'll see how he kind of fits in there. Right. The other one, Pierre-Luc Dubois is getting traded again. In the offseason last year, they were talking about it, and he was traded to the LA Kings, and he had a horrible season. Very bad. He played bottom 6 minutes for a big name player, for a big salary player, and never really lived up to anything of what they signed him to. And now he's on the move to the Washington Capitals for Darcy Kuemper, who arguably didn't work out as a free agent signing either in Washington, especially with how Charlie Lindgren kind of took over the starting position. So what do you think about that trade? It's a 1-for-1. So we'll see how he kind of swaps teams here.
Yeah, the lack of salary retention is the biggest thing for me. It's 7 more years of Pierre-Luc Dubois at $8.5 million. That's I don't know how you trade for that contract. Yeah. And especially when you have a team, and all due respect to the player, I think he's great, but you have a team with Tom Wilson in it already. Do you need a Pierre-Luc Dubois? That's another player that is big and doesn't play very well defensively and has struggled offensively. And obviously Dubois doesn't really have the bite that Wilson has, but can you really fit 2 of those players in your lineup? Like, if I'll look at Ottawa, for example, if Ottawa was acquiring Dubois, you don't need him, but you can kind of work with that because you have a Brady Tkachuk. But Brady Tkachuk, is putting up 70, 80 points a season. You got Tom Wilson and Pierre-Luc Dubois who are putting up 40 points a season each, and you're paying them almost $14 million for the 2 of them. That's I don't get it at all. But for the LA Kings acquiring Darcy Kuemper, I think that it's actually a perfect fit because we saw with Kuemper, he can win the Stanley Cup. He can win games. He can be a good goalie. He just needs a really solid team in front of him. He's kind of like how we're seeing Stuart Skinner right now. Stuart Skinner is not on the same level as Bobrovsky or Shesterkin, or he just beat Ottinger in the playoffs too. But he has a solid team in front of him. And so when he has that solid team playing good hockey, he can be the goalie. He can get the wins. He can make all the saves that he needs to. And Darcy Kuemper's that goalie. Washington is not a strong defensive team at all. So he really struggled with them. I think he's going to do really well in LA.
I think so too. I think he fits that team more. I'm not sure why. I just feel like he fits in LA. I don't know. The name is like LA, Darcy Kuemper. Yeah, I think that fits. He is a very good goalie with a good defense in front of him. He is very good, like you saw in Colorado. And LA, I don't know how they're going to play under new coach, and how that's going to be a full season of the coach. So if the system's going to change, it looks like they want to change the system from that 1-3-1 that they played all year with. So I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how all plays out with a full season. With a different system. So I think Kuemper's going to solidify the goaltending. We'll see how it all plays out. He comes back to the West, which he's played most of his career in.
Well, he goes back to LA because remember 2016, 17, I think he was there for, I don't know, 25 games.
That's why he fits in LA. I'm like, why do I remember him being on LA?
Yeah, he was there, and then he got traded from LA to Arizona, and then Arizona to Colorado. So
yeah, he wasn't there very long. That's why I kind of slipped my mind. But I'm like, why do I remember him in a Kings jersey? There you go.
Yeah, and I think he was really good there too. I think he had like a 925 save percentage or something. I don't have his stats up in front of me, but he was really good. And one more thing I just want to throw in about this trade. There are 2 sides to the argument of Rob Blake today. One, he made a horrendous decision by trading Valerdi, Iafallo, and Kupari and a 2nd-round pick for Dubois. He gave him a monster deal. A lot of people could have predicted that this is how it was going to go. And now he just gets Darcy Kuemper back. And if Darcy Kuemper doesn't work out, is that his job? I think that's a conversation that needs to be had. But on the other hand, good on Rob Blake for owning his mistake and just getting rid of him before his no move. I don't know if it's a no move or no trade kicks in July 1st. And I think I just put a tweet out maybe an hour ago and said that with the Edmonton Oilers winning Game 5, I think that was what made Rob Blake pull the trigger on this trade, because if the buyout window, which opens 48 hours after the Stanley Cup is awarded, he's eligible for a 1/3 buyout until June 24th. So if Florida won last night, then LA could have bought him out at 1/3. With Edmonton winning and forcing a Game 6, now they're going to be the earliest the cup can be awarded is June 23rd. And so that's really pushing it for a buyout. So I think that was a big decision, and it was going to be really close to see if they could buy him out at 1/3 or not, and then they can't. So it'll be the trade.
Yeah, that does make sense of kind of its interesting timing of when this actually happened, right? So yeah, it probably had factored in for sure. So other trades that happened today, also Dallas Stars acquiring a 4th-round pick from the Sharks for Ty Dellandrea. Dellandrea pretty good. I bought him 6 forward for the Stars, going to the Sharks. I mean, going basically from a high-end team to a team that's probably not going to be in the playoffs for a long time. What do you think about that one? Pretty minor trade, but Dellandrea was pretty good 3rd, 4th liner for the Stars.
Well, and he's only 23, and he was drafted 13th overall.
Yeah.
He has really high pedigree. He did pretty well in junior, and he had, I believe it was 29 points last season. And like, that's pretty solid for, I think that was his first full season in the NHL. And I think that they gave up on him a little bit too early. Partly, well, so part of it is that they have a pretty deep forward group. They have one of the deepest, if not the deepest. But like with Joe Pavelski on his way out, is Ty Dellandrea going to be somebody that could have had an opportunity on the top line? And I think that he's going to get that in San Jose and make this trade look like an absolute steal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dellandrea was a pretty high pick. And also, I mean, you're looking at like Logan Stankoven coming to his own this past season, so that takes a spot. Maverick Bourque looked pretty good in his time. They do have a very deep team, not just there, prospect-wise, too, coming. So, yeah, maybe just have room to kind of progress up the lineup. As they thought, move him to a team that will give him that opportunity. 4th-round pick coming back. It's a little trade that could end up being pretty good for the Sharks as they move forward. So we'll see how that goes. Speaking of the Sharks, they also picked up Barclay Goodrow, who was on waivers. So they picked him up off waivers. What do you think about that one? I mean, Goodrow's, again, going from a contending team to a rebuilder. Returning to the team that drafted him, too.
Actually, I don't think he was drafted. I think he just signed there as a free agent.
Yeah,
but and then he played 6 years there. So, but I think I was listening to the 32 Thoughts podcast this morning and listening to what Elliot Friedman had to say on it. And I think that obviously he's right about most things he says, but one really good point that he made is that Goodrow has a no trade clause. San Jose probably wanted a player like Goodrow. San Jose was probably on his no trade clause. And this was a way to kind of say, listen, San Jose, you get first dibs. Like, you get first pick. Do you want him? We can't trade him to you, but we can waive him and you can claim him and he's yours. So that's a really interesting factor that I wonder if it came into play. Because we heard yesterday before he was claimed that it's likely that San Jose is going to claim him. So it's almost as if there was a agreed upon situation here. But I really like the ad because he's a really solid depth guy. And he's one of those guys that can be a leader to these young guys coming in, whether it's going to be Celebrini, if he gets drafted first overall, Will Smith, William Eklund. Like, he's going to be a fantastic leader for these guys.
Yeah, it probably was. I mean, I would assume, unless he played for the Sharks for quite a while. They may not have been on his no trade. I mean, the thing is he was signed out of the OHL, so undrafted. But yeah, I think he was signed to a bad contract by the Rangers. It was too high. But he had some pretty good seasons there. 13 goals, 11 goals, career highs. Even higher than what he did in Tampa. In the regular season, that is. I mean, the playoffs, he was pretty good. He didn't really score a lot in the playoffs either. Just complemented that third line so well. And I think he'll end up being pretty good for the Sharks. I mean, anything is good for them. I mean, like you said, veteran a veteran being on a team that's going to be very young for a long time here, he could end up helping out. I mean, he only has a couple seasons left on his contract, right?
3 more. Yeah.
3 more. So I mean, he'll be there for a bit of the time with Celebrini and Eklund and them. So maybe establish that culture with him. So yeah, good addition. We'll see how it goes this season with them. But I mean, like I said, anything San Jose does is going to be better coming into next season, right?
Well, I saw somebody suggest that he would be fantastic at 1.8 million. And if San Jose would retain, and he could be an awesome trade chip to another team contending. But San Jose is retaining on Erik Karlsson, Brent Burns, and Timo Meier already. So they have at least a couple years that they can't retain a single dollar on anybody.
Yeah. So no trading big contracts away. So yeah. So before we end here, what do you think the next domino is? We talked about a couple of the bigger goaltenders here. Draft day trades usually happen. Some big ones usually happen on draft day or even the evening before. Do you see any of that happening?
There's a lot of talk about Ottawa right now, and that's probably what I'm just seeing because I cover Ottawa and whatnot. But Travis Yost, who was one of the first on the Markstrom trade today, he said that Ottawa is kind of looking at some things, and then forgive me, but I forget who it was, but somebody posted that Ottawa and Philadelphia have a trade pretty well done. They're just waiting a couple days to see what happens, and then Jordan Schultz. Oh, I forget. He played in the NHL. He won a cup. He's a reporter now. Schultz, Jordan, Justin. I get confused.
This is Justin Schultz, probably.
Justin Schultz, yeah. And he just said that Ottawa is looking to move a couple defensemen, and they have multiple defensemen on the block. So that's kind of catching my eye quite a bit. So I think that they're going to be next on the list to make a big deal.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, especially when now that Markstrom's off, now those goaltenders are going to be they're going to be a hot commodity now, especially Allmark. I think he's probably the next goaltender to get traded. I'm not sure about Saros. I'm not entirely convinced that Predators is going to trade him, but
me either.
Yeah, so I mean, Allmark, I think definitely he's going to get traded, so he'll be the next one, and then we'll see who else. And Kuemper's gone too. I mean, he was another one on that list of goaltenders potentially getting traded. So. Yeah, I think it's probably going to be Allmark and probably the next few days here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a crazy day in the books for trades. I mean, not as crazy as a trade deadline, but two big trades that really you don't necessarily see at this point of the summer. Usually it's a day or two before the draft that we see them. So yeah, it's a surprising day and it's a news-filled day. But the draft is coming, and we'll have a bunch more videos on that. But with this trade video kind of just inserted. So enjoy. Make sure to check out all of our stuff at thehockeywriters.com. Lots of analysis of these trades coming out. And also our draft guide is live and with a bunch of prospect profiles. You want to take a read, 135 plus now, and lots of features, lots of fun stuff. So, and also the YouTube channel has a ton of content as well on the draft, and they'll be coming up every day, different videos. So keep it tuned here. And we'll see you next time.